So we get a lot of questions from folks asking how to know when to harvest winter squash. And so we'll just give you a little quick tutorial here. This is Blanco, the pumpkin. It's a Cucurbita pepo. And the pepos behave more or less the same way. So that includes pumpkins, delicata squash, and another number of other winter squash. Generally, all winter squash, you'll want to look and check the rind. I like to do what I call the thumbnail test, where you're just putting some pressure on the rind of the pumpkin and looking to see that that rind is really hardened up and it's not leaving like a significant lasting impression from a little bit of pressure. And then also you will want to check the stem and make sure that it's dried down as much as possible. So I give it a little wiggle, and this stem is pretty woody, and if I was to tug it, it would break off at the vine, meaning that the stem is completely dried down and sealed off from the fruit at this point. So this one's ready to go. So this is mashed potatoes, which is Cucurbita pepo. It's kind of an acorn-like squash, and we just pulled one off, and the rind is nice and firm, not leaving a mark with a fingernail, and then it snaps right off of the plant. And that is when you can tell when these are ready to go. And this is a good example of a butternut that's not ready yet. So butternut squash is a Cucurbita moschata, so it's a different species than the pepos. And they are a little longer season and sometimes have a hard time ripening in time in our maritime climate here. So again, I like to do the thumbnail test, and as you can see, the thumbnail is going down, making a dent and like leaving a lasting impression. That's a really good indicator that it's not ripe yet. You can see that there's a green cast to it still. It hasn't quite colored up yet. And in butternuts, a lot of them will have kind of this speckling and striping, which when they're fully ripe, you won't be able to see any of this pattern to the rind at all. With moschatas, their stem kind of always feels woody, so it's not the best indicator of whether they're ripe or not. We'll try to find you a ripe one to compare it with. So here's a good example of butternuts that are in various stages of ripeness. They're not, neither of them are quite ready yet, but this one is a little bit farther behind. It's got a little more green to it, and you can see the speckling pattern, and the rind is still a little soft. This one's a little farther along, and they're from the same plant. But you can see how the pattern is starting to disappear, and it's starting to get a little bit more uniformly buff colored. Okay, so these are the ripest ones we can find today. They're not fully there yet, but as you can see, the buff color is getting more uniform. If you are like us and you have a short growing season, you can actually harvest them at this point and then bring them in to ripen and cure a little bit. So what we recommend is if they still have a little bit of a green cast, but the rind is still pretty firm, go ahead and pull it in and put it in a warm area. I like to put it in a sunny window for a couple of weeks, and it'll finish ripening on its own. This is the third major group of winter squash that we sell. This is the variety is Sugar Hubbard, and it's the Cucurbita Maxima. These are the very long season squash, and these are some of the squash that will store the best over winter and into the next spring. They are a little different in that they have this unusually thick, corky stem attachment to the fruit. So like with the other squash, you'll pay attention and the rind will start to get real nice and hardened up. And then when you're thinking about harvesting, you want to pay attention to the stem. And this one is not ready to go because the stem is still pretty green. And over time, this thing will become more corky. And you can see a little bit of that starting to happen here. It's starting to dry down, but this one is still pretty green, and I would wait for it to dry down more from here. Okay, so here's a good example of a stem that's much more dried down. And as you can see, we call it corkiness, but it looks like a dried down cork. So this one is still not completely dried all the way, but it's a lot better along than the first one.
So would you harvest this one or wait?
I would wait if possible, but if you had to harvest, it would probably be okay. It would probably survive. I would just be sure to clip the vine as far away from the fruit as possible.